Welcome back, guys. I'm SeeJayAre, and this is episode 3 of the Game Boy Quest. Alright guys, here we are. We're at episode 3. 8 more games picked up today from 2 different individuals. Some good stuff this week. I was able to get some really good games for a great price. I'll mention it again. You can see a link to my game database in the description below. It'll tell you every game that I currently have. If you have any extras, any doubles, feel free to contact me on Instagram, Facebook, message me through YouTube, but Instagram and Facebook are the best ways to get a hold of me, and you'll find links to Instagram and Facebook in the description below. I've been saying this every video, but I started modding some Game Boys, and it's revitalized my love for the Game Boy. Actually, I never had a huge love for the Game Boy until I started backlight modding these Game Boys. And it really changes the game when it comes to Game Boy. So I love playing Game Boy games. I decided to go for a complete collection. I didn't realize when I decided that there was 500 games. So big thank you to all of you who have been helping me out with this collection. This week we've got 4 games from a guy named Chance. I believe his name is I Am Vanilla Fire on Instagram. Thank you very much, Chance. And my buddy Joel comes through again. We're actually going to get back-to-back videos from my friend Joel, JM Kennels, who has always been great to me for helping me out with getting games cheap that I need. He travels for work, so he has relationships with store owners, flea market booths. He's all over the place, so he gets really good deals on games, and he passes those savings on to me, which I very much appreciate. So thank you, Joel, and thank you very much, Chance. We'll start off with Chance's games here. 4 games, like I said, the first of which, let me see here. First of which is Turn and Burn, the F-14 Dogfight Simulator. Key word here is simulator. This is a very sim-type game for a Game Boy game. It's not very arcadey. I didn't find it very fun. Basically, the first level I played, it was one-on-one, so I was against one other plane. I think you can set how many other planes are in, but I just did one-on-one, so maybe that was part of the problem. But I had trouble actually finding the plane. I believe you push start and it shows you a map mode, or it's one of the buttons that'll switch to a map mode. And I found myself actually just flying around in map mode, because in regular mode it's really hard to track down where the plane is, and then you'll fly past them. Then you're constantly switching back and forth from your map mode to the main game mode. You're really looking at nothing. It's just a blank sky and some water below. So it was very sim-like, if that makes sense, for a Game Boy game. It wasn't as fun as I was hoping. I was hoping for some like intense dogfighting. That being said, again, with the Game Boy games, I feel like you need to put a lot of time in with some of these to learn all the mechanics and learn how to do everything properly. I only played this for like 25 minutes or so. So these are just my initial impressions of these games. Don't take these as like a final end review. So from what I played at the beginning, in the first 25 minutes, I wasn't really that big of a fan of it. I'm not sure if I'll go back to it. Not really the greatest type of game to be putting on a Game Boy. Next up here from Chance is a puzzle game called Loops. Now, when I saw this game, I know this game's on the NES and I don't own it, so I just assumed it was like a pipe dream. What is it? Yeah, pipe dream clone, where you're connecting pipes and you're hitting the button and the timer's going off and the water's going through and you have to connect the pipe to the other end. That's not the case. You're actually just trying to loop together the pipes in like a series of loops for points. There are 3 different A game, B game, and C game, and I think C game is they flash you a puzzle at first, and then they take away the pieces and you have to make it how it looked when it first flashed at the beginning, which is an interesting take on the game. But basically you are just trying to connect as many loops of a puzzle as you can to gain points. So it's pretty basic. It's not great. I mean, it's not bad. It's a typical, I won't even say it's a below average Game Boy puzzle game. The Game Boy actually is home to a lot of really good puzzle games. So I don't know if I would count this as one of them, but that's Loops. Another puzzle game. Like I said, Game Boy is kind of known for its puzzle games. This one is, how do I describe this? Ashido. Actually, I'll describe it. I watch Jeremy Parrish. I think he was former 1UP or former IGN. Former 1UP, I believe. but he does a whole video series. He's actually released 2 books so far on Game Boy games. So, and he described Ashido, this is Ashido, The Way of the Stones, as a reverse mahjong. So as far as I know, in mahjong, you're starting with like a pile of tiles and you're trying to match them to remove the tiles and eventually get rid of them all. This one, you're actually adding tiles, is how he described it. So I didn't really put any time into this one. I'm not really that interested in Ashido. But from what he said and from other reviews that I saw, it's actually pretty good. I'm not really into mahjong type games. If I'm going to play a puzzle game, it's going to be something a little bit different and a little more video game-like and less board game-like. The last game from Chance is the best one. This is Double Dragon. This is probably the most expensive game in the bunch from him. I believe it goes for like $15 to $20. Actually a pretty faithful, not reproduction, but I believe it actually does follow along with the NES version. It's actually was a lot of fun. It actually controls really well. You've got your kick, you got your punch, you got your special A and B spin kick. The jump kick works well. A pretty faithful translation to the Game Boy. Music was pretty good. So Double Dragon, very happy to have that one in the collection. That's actually a game that I will play on a regular basis. So it's nice to get these other 3 games, but Double Dragon is one that I'll play. So okay, up next, 4 games, like I said, from Joel, JM Kennels. I'll post a link to Joel's Instagram page in the description below. Go check him out. He finds a ton of really good gaming stuff too. So the first one, okay, interesting game here. A little hard. I didn't realize, actually, not a super uncommon game. I think it's like a $10 or $15 game, and it's Bubble Ghost. So how do I explain Bubble Ghost? Bubble Ghost, I believe the story is you are a ghost, a cute little ghost, and you're trying to blow a bubble through a haunted mansion. I think you're starting from the basement, and I believe there's like 30 something levels, and you're blowing the bubble from one screen represents one room, so from room to room, all the way from the basement out the front door. So you're in charge of blowing and like kind of guiding this bubble through obstacles. So there's like a candle which will pop your balloon. There's spikes everywhere. If your balloon hits a wall, it's gonna pop. So yeah, it's an interesting type game. There's nothing else like this that I know of on the Game Boy. I've never played a game like this before. It can be pretty tough at times, but the controls aren't bad for the Game Boy. It does a pretty good job. You are angling your blows so that the bubble will guide through levels. It's a pretty interesting game. Not one of my favorites, but it's still definitely worth picking up if you can find it cheap. Next up, Paperboy. Paperboy, I was pleasantly surprised with this version on the Game Boy. It's actually pretty faithful to the NES game. I think actually I might like it better. I almost feel like it controls a little bit tighter, but it's very, very similar to the NES game. They did a very good job. I've mentioned it before. I would say like the graphics aren't as good, but they do whatever they can on that little cartridge to represent the NES and arcade version, and they do a pretty good job of it. I've never been a huge fan of the Paperboy games, but you know, everybody has a connection to this. Everybody knows somebody or they've owned this game on the NES at some point, so it's actually pretty fun to have it on the Game Boy. Up next is Castlevania Adventure. I had heard pretty bad things about this game, that it was not very good. I was pleasantly surprised. It's actually not as bad as I thought. I have Castlevania 2, which is actually a very good Castlevania game on the Game Boy, but I wasn't really disappointed by this. I guess my expectations were pretty low. It's a pretty basic Castlevania game. The jumping, there's some issues with the controls and the mechanics in this game that aren't up to par with previous Castlevania games, but I definitely think it's worth picking up. You can find this game for pretty cheap. It goes for about $10, so I would probably recommend picking up Castlevania Adventure. It's not a bad game. I just think that expectations at the time were pretty high, and they definitely did not meet them. It's probably one of the worst cartridge-based Castlevania games, but like I said, still worth picking up. And probably the jewel in this bunch is Mr. Do. I didn't realize Joel gave me a great deal on these games. He tends to just charge me what he paid for them, which is absolutely amazing. I'm very thankful for that. This one goes for a little bit of money, actually. I think the US version's a little bit tougher to find than the European versions. Did I mention the game? This is Mr. Do. Mr. Do, by the way. How do I describe Mr. Do? Mr. Do's been out way back. I believe it started on the arcade. I think there was a television or 2600 version of it. Basically like a arcade puzzler. You are eating cherries and you're trying to drop apples on these little monster guys, and I've played it several times. I probably put an hour and a half into this, and I feel like it's one of those games where it's pretty straightforward what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to eat all of the cherries to complete the level, or defeat all the ghosts. You can defeat them by dropping apples on their heads, by clearing out a path, and then it gives way and falls on their heads. I feel like the goal is pretty evident, but I feel like I haven't quite mastered the mechanics of this game. I feel like it's a little bit deeper than that. I haven't quite entirely figured out Mr. Do. I have no experience with it. I've never played it until this version. So graphics are really nice. Seems like a really nice version of Mr. Do. So I'm excited to play this a lot more and figure out those mechanics and get a little bit deeper into this game. So that's probably the best pickup of this bunch, Mr. Do. It's nice to get that one off the list. What am I at? I think I'm at around 130 games now with this batch. I've got a big batch coming in from someone helping me out in the States through YouTube. He contacted me and he's going to grab a huge bunch for me. Next week, or next video, you will see another group of games that I got from my buddy Joel, and then I'll move on to probably a 3-video series. I believe I'm getting over 100 games from a guy, well, his name is Trigger Warning Gaming on YouTube. There'll be a 3-video series from him because I'm getting around 100 games, so that'll be a big one. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, thank you very much, Chance, for sending the games. Big thanks to Joel, JM Kennels. Follow him in the link below to his Instagram page. Yeah, if you've got any extra games that you are willing to help me out with this collection, feel free to check out first the database in the description below to see what I'm looking for, and then feel free to contact me on Facebook. Anyways, thank you to everyone who's been helping me out, and till the next episode.